Good afternoon. I am Dr. Ollie Jones. I am the co-president of the Ohio Grandparent Kinship Care Coalition. I want to welcome you to our monthly Zoom meeting where we share information to assist you to provide the care that you need in terms of the children that are placed in your home on a kinship care status. Let me start by thanking the 80 caregivers and the 13 agencies who completed the Kinship Caregiver Survey. Thank you so very much. The 3 caregivers who completed the Kinship Survey were also selected to receive a $100 gift card. And those 3 caregivers are Amanda Tanner, Serena Mitchell, and Jackie Lewis. Congratulations. Our next Zoom meeting will be March the 15th. Please mark your calendars and tell us at least 5 people about it and invite them. We will feature a presentation about the services for caregivers provided by the Ohio Children's Trust Fund. So I look forward to seeing you next month. Our speaker today is Lily Jackson, and our topic is grandparents raising grandchildren in the United States, changing family forms, stigma, social policies, and the impact of trauma being a caregiver. So basically we're talking about the trauma that you experience being a kinship care provider. The goal is the understanding of the impact of trauma on family life from a viewpoint of female caregivers living in the urban poverty. Miss Lily Rachel Jackson is has a master's degree in social work and is a licensed social worker for the state of Ohio. Ms. Jackson was born in Akron, Ohio. She earned her BS in psychology and sociology in 1996 and a master's of social work in 2000. She is the co-founder of the Greater Akron Kent Association of Black Social Workers and is currently the National Association of Black Social Workers Comprehensive Health and Wellness Committee.
Thank you, Dr. Jones.
Let me get finished. I'm just
sorry.
Not a problem. She's also the chairperson of the NAACP Criminal Justice Committee. She provides training in trauma, informed care, substance abuse treatment, and African American mental health issues. She is currently a consultant for the Urban Ounce of Prevention, supervising master's level students from Case Western Reserve University. She is a strong advocate, activist, involved in her faith community, and most important, a grandmother caring for her grandson. I have known Lily for over 20 years, and she is an exceptional individual. So we're so glad to have you come and present to us at this time. Ms. Jackson, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Jones, and thank you, Ohio Grandparent Kinship Coalition, for inviting me into your space. I must start off by admitting I really enjoyed this. You know, when I submitted my first presentation, it was missing something, and so I got some information, and it rallied me up to learn more about kinship care. And I realized that this is something that we have been doing in the Black community for a long time. So I really enjoyed this, and I kind of like bit my teeth on it. And I hope you will enjoy or learn something from this presentation. The qualities of grandparents. Becoming a grandmother is a wonderful moment. You know, one moment you're a mother, the next you're all wise and prehistoric. Children need positive, trustworthy, and reliable role models. And one brief article that I was reading was about being a conscientious caregiver, because even in kinship or fictive kinship care, you still must be positive, trustworthy, and a reliable role model. Caregiving provided by grandparents serve as a safety net for children in need of parenting, regardless of race, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. Approximately 2.9 million grandparents make breakfast, organize their grandchildren's activities, arrange doctor's appointments, help with homework, and worry about how they're going to afford college, coupled with their everyday household experiences.
Ms. Jackson, this is Lisa. You need to put your PowerPoint up, ma'am. It's not up.
Okay, I don't know why.
Yeah.
So you're not seeing
your
this?
screen. No, ma'am.
I'll go back and share again.
Thank you.
And I'd like to ask caregivers that are online to please go into the chat and put your email address and name if you would like to put your name in order to be selected for possibly be selected for a $50 gift card during the meeting. Thank you.
Share. 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 And can you see this now?
Yes, ma'am. Now go ahead and start it from the beginning.
Because when I start from the beginning, I don't know why this is, okay. Now, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. You know, we were talking about caregiving by grandparents. And two, doing this research, you know, we have to think it's not always by grandparents. There's aunts, uncles, cousins, and then including fictive care also. And as I mentioned before, there are approximately 2.9 million grandparents, and I consider myself one of them. I have making breakfast, taking them to the doctor, appointments, and those that are college bound are how they're going to get to college. And there are LGBTQ caregivers also. There are LGBT caregivers in child welfare who are foster parents or adoptive parents. So, you know, it takes in some of everyone: young, old, gay, straight, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian. And this has been going on for some time. The caregiver journey, I thought this was nice. You know, this is about a mother whose son had cancer, you know, and she had to prepare for him. The caregiver's journey, insights and stories from cancer survivors and caregivers who are willing to share their inspirational stories, learn from those who have taken this journey. And I selected this slide because what we know about the other side of caregiving, or the kinship care, nobody told us that that we were going to have to reach back. And that is why you see some of the slide is a symbol of Sankofa, which we had to reach back and bring our children and grandchildren or our people we're caring for to the front. You know, we just thought we were going to be infants, toddlers, preschoolers, grade schoolers, teenagers, young adults, middle-aged adults, and older adults. But nobody said that we were going to have to turn that circle back around and bring our families to the forefront. This was taken from an article, Legally Recognizing Fictive Kin Relationships, the call for action. The call for action, the leading national child welfare policy organizations in the United States support including fictive kin and policies affecting families. The Child Welfare League of America defines kinship care as full-time care, nurturing, and protection of children by relatives, members of their tribe, clan, godparents, step-parents, or any adult who has kinship bond with a child. Now, from this legal recognizing fictive care, they're saying in 2020, 34% of all children in foster care in the United States were placed with kin. Approximately 1,370 children. The number of children in foster care living in kin has increased by 8% since 2010. This increased funding would help ensure permanency for more children, additionally placed with fictive kin, and help children avoid trauma resulting from being placed with strangers. Allowing children to be placed with fictive kin would also help alleviate recruitment and retention issues facing foster care agencies. While the number of children ending foster care in the United States experienced a decrease in the number of available foster homes during that time. And here is a picture, because today the dynamics of the family looks different. There are many multiracial families. The importance of fictive kin in the Black community has strong historical roots. During enslavement, Black children were often left without parents, but found fictive aunts, uncles, who acted as parents for them. And this is something that I found out to be very truthful. When I did my genealogy, I found out that there were grandchildren in the household at the time that the census was taken in 1900. And it was my search was, who was this child? Whose child did this belong to? Today, fictive kin relationships continue to be crucial to childbearing. I'm sorry, I gotta turn this off. I'm on Zoom, I can't talk. Yeah, the doctor wants to call and everybody wants to call. Like I was saying, find my place. Today, fictive kin relationships continue to be crucial to childbearing in the Black community, rearing in the Black community. Black families often engage in other mothering, and that's a new term for me. I hadn't heard this. Relying on both relatives and fictive kin to meet their children's physical and emotional needs. Other mothering has occurred not only informally, but also throughout institutions such as churches, women's boards, but also through institutions as churches, clubs, community service organizations. While Black children make up 14% of children in the United States, they make up 25% of the children being raised in kinship arrangements. Whether inside the child welfare system, whether or not inside the child welfare system. And here's a nice nurturing picture of family. Getting back to those grandparents raising grandchildren in the United States, this changing form. I'm trying to turn my phone off. Oh, finally got it. So it doesn't be ringing. Family forms are diverse as a consequence of increased divorce rates, the proliferation of single family parents, whereby increasing the need of parents to rely on extended families. And it's just not divorce rate. In today's society, you know, there's been so many things where we would have to have children go removed from the home to go stay with grandparents or a relative. And I will get to some of those reasons later on in this presentation. And it's important to have extended family support for the care of these children. At the same time, economic stagnation has manifested by declining real wages and the wholesale reduction in jobs paying a living wage and providing benefits. You know, in the real story, you see mom or dad having to go to work and they have to have somewhere or someone to care for the children while they go to work or go to school or are in prison or are ill, as well as re-entrenchment in the government benefits for single mother and working poor have comprised the ability of parents to effectively raise their children, furthering their need to rely on extended relatives to fill in the gap for childcare. Most commonly, grandparents become the principal guardians of distressed families, whether, let me go back. Trying to keep my hand on the right button. Most commonly, grandparents become the principal guardians of distressed families, whether their middle generation is incapable of raising their children. Yet, in spite of the proliferation of grandparent-headed families, public policy in the United States has not kept up with that challenge posed by its non-traditional family form. Yes, the family has changed, is not the same anymore. We have examined this issue in general theoretical terms as an example of how family policies is often lag behind changing social conditions, particularly when they are predicated on ideological preference for traditional family forms that resist acknowledging the need for families that lie outside the boundaries of those forms. As nearly as 2000, I think I've said this before, grandparents claim primary responsibility for co-resident of a grandchild. These include grandparents living in households consisting of 3 or more generations, as well as those skip generation households consist of only grandparents and grandchildren. A salient example is the case of grandparents raising grandchildren as a result of HIV/AIDS epidemic. Particularly the AIDS epidemic is more crucial because they're here in the AIDS epidemic. There's the opportunistic infections where there are more illnesses. Kaposi sarcoma comes up, pneumonia. There is evidence that grandparents take on substantial responsibility for children of HIV-infected parents, including assuming custody, even while the parent is still alive, because the parent is ill and they want to continue to have a healthy existence for the child. Grandparents raising grandchildren can take a toll on grandparents, because we have to realize most grandparents, we're at that stage, trying to live off of our Social Security pensions. And so we are on another form of fixed income. They're higher than normal rates. There's depression, sleeplessness, emotional problems, hypertension, in some cases, diabetes, feeling exhausted, loneliness, isolation, less privacy, and no time period. And I'm going to get into another slide where, that self-care is important. Here you are, we are as grandparents, we are getting adjusted to the child's lifestyle, and the child is trying to get used to our lifestyle. And sometimes it's not all smooth because it's like one of the theorists say that we're going to form, norm, storm, and adjourn, because those first stages of the child and the caregiver coming together, sometimes it's not very smooth. And I remember working in children's services, after we got placement, the relative would call and say, I can't do this. And I'm going like, inside, I want to say, oh, no, don't do this. We have to find other placement for this child. And so the child gets dragged around. And so it's trauma for both the child and the caregiver. These are some of the things that I picked out where a caregiver would have to come into place, whether it's kinship or fictive, mass incarceration, the war on drugs, because, one while we were removing children for marijuana, excessive use, there had to be a pattern, and child welfare, whether it was abuse, dependence, or neglect. And then to the other side, Black maternal health deaths. The grandmother, along with the child's father, whether they're married or not, is taking care of the child. Mental health. There are some places where mental health was so severe where the patient isn't taking their medication. And so for the safety of the children, the child may be removed. Unemployment, teenage pregnancy, military deployment. I would never forget my very first time at Children's Services. This was back during the Iraq War. I was called out to a house that was a dirty home. And when I went to the home, there was a car motor in the baby's playpen. The floor was dirty, but the baby was plump. He seemed to be happy. It was a biracial child. And I felt, I cannot remove this child. He's not in any harm. They just need to clean up, and make it look child friendly. Well, I asked the the grandparents, they told me their story, and I was just working on the weekend. And so I said, well, I'll come back Sunday and I'm going to do an inspection and, make sure the house, the place looks child friendly. This is the space for the baby to play in, make it look like that. And so when I went back on Sunday, they were so happy because they had to get in contact with the child parents who were in the Army at the time. And this would be trauma for the parents, trauma for the grandparents, and possibly trauma for the child. So it ended up, and I reported back to the caseworker because it wasn't my case. I was just to do a home visit. And it did look real nice. And they were very grateful, and they were on to make they noted to the caseworker in charge of the case that the worker was out. Divorce is very hard on children, especially young boys. And then two young boys, and then having to come with grandma or granddad or uncle who's age, or there's two different lifestyles there. There may be somebody that plays sports, and that person, may be physically challenged in some way. Neglect, abuse, abandonment, death, physical illness. Thank God for grandparents, and thank goodness for conscientious caregivers. Children and their families living in poor inner city family neighborhoods are at high risk for experiencing multiple trauma. Caregivers explain changing daily routines to accommodate child distress and promoting positive family processes such as increased protectiveness. They also describe various roles that religion, spirituality play in their coping with trauma, including finding comfort in the faith that God. Children and their families living in poor urban neighborhoods contend with high risk of experiencing severe stressors and multiple traumas. Additionally, the context of urban poverty is loaded with potentially dangerous circumstances that heighten individuals' vulnerability to traumatic distress disorder after exposure. Second, exposure to traumatic circumstances causes distress. For children, common reactions include increased monitoring of their environment, anxiety when separated from trusted adults, irritability, aggression, and/or increased needs for affection, support, and reassurance. Persistence of such distress or interference with functioning may be labeled post-traumatic stress syndrome or symptoms, which can progress to post-traumatic stress disorder. And one example that I'm aware of, when I was teaching counseling in an elementary school, one of the young students on my caseload, he was brought to me because of a drug deal gone bad at their house, where the children were forced to go inside of the closet by gunpoint when they asked the mother, for the money for the drugs, and, children's service were put in, and here they were placed with, and thank God they had a great grandmother who was able to care for them in her home. And I can't say anything more than thank goodness for caregivers, grandparents, uncles, and aunts and cousins. Third, trauma-related distress experienced by adults can add burden to their already stressed parenting role. It's like a compound, complex trauma, and that's why self-care is very important as a caregiver also. You get caregiver burnout for people caring for grandparents. At one time, I was in the sandwich generation. I was caring for my parents at the same time helping caring for my grandchildren. Fourth, research indicates that trauma-related distress in the context of urban poverty is associated with negative changes in family functioning. Many families react to chronic stress, poverty, violence with chaos, disorganization, and instability. Externally, uncomfortable situations make it difficult to sustain an organized, stable daily schedule. Finally, some families faced with difficult environment and multiple stressors show resiliency, adaptation, and positive outcomes that may serve as the counterweight to the negative outcomes discussed earlier. In fact, some may argue that certain families experience post-traumatic growth and cope in more productive ways following traumatic events. Yeah, this is what I was talking about earlier. I haven't read the book, but I just wanted to have something nice about self-care and the importance of self-care. You know, if you can arrange respite where someone can watch the kids while you take care of yourself so that you can come back in as a caregiver and be that conscientious caregiver. Understanding the impact of trauma in life from the viewpoint of female caregivers living in urban poverty. This is the website that you can go to. And I'm going to leave it there, and but these will be available for you at a later date. I thought the PowerPoint was longer than that. And now I want to open up for questions. Lisa, are you going to be the moderator, the facilitator of the questions?
No, ma'am. Most
can
time
do that.
everyone just asks the questions and they'll raise their hands.
Okay. Do I have any questions?
What was the name of the book that you mentioned?
For self-care?
Ms. Huggins, if you'll ask the question again.
We want to know what the name of the book was that you just had by Susan White about the healthcare.
Self-care?
Yes,
Well, see,
self-care.
what I did, Ms. Huggins, I Googled, self-care because I haven't read a particular book and couldn't get one, a picture of one. So that was just to remind folks how important it is for self-care. It may be taking time out to get a hot bubble bath or a night out with the girls or line dancing, exercise. But self-care, is very important is what I was trying to emphasize, because you have to, get that self-care because you may be dealing in a very stressful situation. The child or the person you are taking care of may be severe.
It's in the chat. It's called Self-Care for Caregivers by Suzanne White.
Okay.
It's in the chat. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
I have another question.
I have a question for the caregivers, and could you share your experience with trauma with the children that have been placed in your home? What have been your experience? I know for me as a caregiver, in terms of trauma, I was very traumatized because I was living my best life as a grandmother with no responsibilities, going where I wanted to go, just doing me. Yeah. And in a crisis situation, I ended up going to one of my child's home where that person was being arrested, and I had to actually command and demand that I take my grandchildren with me then, opposed to them going into the agency. And because at that time I worked for the organization, they were able to call my name in and approve it right there on the spot, which was good. So I was able to take my at that time 3 and 4 year old grandchildren, and I thought I was through raising children. Okay. And so for me, it was a lot of trauma for them because of what they had gone through. And it was a lot of trauma for them because of the structure in my home and the expectations and those things. And it was a lot of trauma for me because they tore my house up. I mean, when I say that, I mean, they literally destroyed furniture and clothes and just out of anger. And so they themselves went through a lot of trauma. Then, of course, I experienced a lot of trauma, and it took the village, which was my family and my church family, to really help me to bring some stability to them. So did you experience any kind of trauma or just getting a child or having them in your home or making life adjustment where you had plans to travel and now you have to redo your lifestyle?
I see Miss Taylor and then Miss Dotson. Go ahead, Miss Taylor. Thank you, Dr. Jones.
Well, I was in a different relationship. My daughter, and she was with my grandson's father. They weren't married, but my daughter has epilepsy, so she has seizures. But they were living in my home, and I was in another relationship living with a gentleman, like the lady said before, taking care of me and doing that and seeing. And then she ended up quit taking her medicine and ended up in the hospital, seizure after seizure. And the father didn't even call the ambulance. He called her father, and she ended up at lockdown at the hospital because they felt like there were more damage to her, like she was being abused and she was not reporting it. My grandson was neglected. He wasn't talking at the time, and she had told me she was making appointments to get him tested for autism, but that just fell apart because she didn't drive, and I kept on her with that. But I ended up at the hospital where my daughter was on lockdown from my grandson's father. He was on methamphetamine, and I took emergency custody. I called him and I said, I'm picking up my grandson when I leave this hospital after we get a plan together to make sure she was okay. I lost the relationship I was in. I had to evict. My daughter was in the hospital almost 6 weeks for not taking her medicine, and I ended up having to evict Kane's father from my home. I couldn't just say, get out, because he lived there rent free. You still have to go to the court system. Right. I mean, it was a total, I was on my own. I had a job at that time. I've always worked since I was a kid, and to go from that to not being able to, it's now been 5 years and we're in a different place. He does have a diagnosis now, and we've got a village, and the people at our library, they know us by first name. And I mean, we've got therapists that work with him every day. We found a wonderful school, but this is 5 years later and we still struggle with finances. Cause I mean, I'm in a nice home, but it's high tax rate. And I mean, I struggle to keep up. I mean, it's paid off, but I mean, I don't want to give it up because I've had it, all these years, but I mean,
right.
I may end up doing that. It's hard, but I mean, right. And I hear some of the ladies on the website that we go to through Angela, and it just brings tears to your eyes because you've been there and you see it and you know it. And it's like you reach out to these people, and they're my family because it's just me and him. That's it. So I'll let anybody
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Emotional myself, thinking at times. So there was trauma.
Yeah, having a peace of mind is very important.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Ms. Taylor. Ms. Dotson?
Hi. So I do the self-care for myself in many different ways. And my grandson has autism too. But my thing is, in my group that I do with our school, is I'm finding out more of the trauma for these kids, especially like the teenage kids that are having trauma. Do you guys know of any group that's online that these kids actually talk on how they are doing with the kinship thing? The kids need like their own, how do they do their own self-care from the, especially teenagers that have just now been thrown into situations.
Right. Well, one of the places that I have been trying to made contact with was Summit DD. Because of COVID, there were programs before where they could all come together, Then some would separate them, and then some would be co-ed. They have fun activities where they would dance, listen to movies. So you could contact them and see if they have anything there at Summit DD.
It's Solid DD. Is that what you're saying?
Summit County DD. Do you live in Akron?
No, we're Columbus, Ohio, Franklin County area.
Well, try your DD and call and ask them. If they don't know, ask them, can they refer to you to someone they know?
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Miss Medur, you're on mute, ma'am.
Hi, I got my great niece 5 years ago, and she was neglected, passed around when we got her. She was damaged emotionally, and so as soon as I got her insurance card, I put her in trauma therapy. And so she was in that for 3.5 years. That really helped her a lot. But my husband and I also saw the counselor because it turned our household upside down.
That's right.
My husband just retired like 2 years before. And, you know, we had our plans of, you know, get up and go and all that. And yeah, you know, but we didn't, we got the call. We you know, you have to decide quickly in a way. You know, we didn't want that child to go back into that environment. And we thought, okay, we'll take her in until the mom and dad, you know, especially the mom, get some help and, you know, hopefully off drugs and that. Well, here we are 5 years later. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I'm glad we took her in. I don't regret that, but now she's a tween. And what I'm struggling with a little bit is, well, you know, she's a tween. The attitude, you don't yell at me. You don't tell me what to do. And, you know, I tell you what, and I have complex PTSD too. So the one counselor had said, we trigger each other. Okay. And you get tired of yelling and being mad and, you know, so now, you know, my one friend, I'll go over her house and which is okay with my husband and my great niece, and just spend the night and we just talk and watch movies. And when I come back home, I do feel refreshed, you know, I got the stress off, but it's just over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And so I'm back at counseling. The one counselor, she had left, well, because of some changes in the laws, she's like, I can't do that. But anyway, so I'm in counseling again. And that counselor said, well, I'm seeing you're having a hard time letting go. But when it's kind of over and over again, it's hard to let go. You let go, you think everything's okay. And then it's like, bam, there you go again, you know? And I don't know.
It's taking one day at a time.
Exactly. I love her dearly. She is a good girl. And the one thing that I also did with her is I got her in equine therapy with horses. And because of us having kinship care, we don't have to pay anything, or we could give a little bit, whatever, you know, and that has made a big difference with her.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. So
that's one thing I found too that was healthy for both of us. Now I'm what they call an active grandmother. And that was a term I learned because I took gerontology in graduate school. So I'm an active grandmother, and I have been. And people know throughout Summit County that know me for a long time. I had these little 5 ducks behind me wherever I went. I just pack them all up and say, okay, we're going.
Mm-hmm.
So
not far from Akron. I'm in Navarre. Maslin area. I'm 7 miles west of Maslin, so I'm not far from you.
Does your niece, is she diagnosed with anything?
She was diagnosed. We got her when she first turned 7, so she was diagnosed with PTSD.
Okay.
So that's why the trauma counselor said she noticed at times we do trigger each other.
Right.
You know, and that's what's hard. And I don't like it. I don't like getting so emotional and then yelling, but then we tell her, if you just listen, you know.
Yeah. Sometimes, you know, it'd be maybe a girls' night out and we can sit down and talk about these things away from home.
Yeah, we do. And then I'm in the group with Tangi and I think Lenora, you're in there too. And Yaya and all that. And like Tangi said, that's my family, you know. It's well, we can all relate, and I don't know what I'd do without it.
That's good. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Teresa?
Thank you. I just wanted to know if anybody's working on a federal level with Social Security to get additional benefits for us. As an example, my brother is an older parent who is raising his natural children. And because he is retired and a parent, his children get extra benefits for that. But I do not receive it because I did not adopt my kinship children. I didn't adopt them because their father is still an active parent.
I'm not familiar that. Are you, Dr. Jones? But you can also call the Social Security Administration. You may have to sign up, and it's like getting a username and a password to be able to ask them questions, or you can call them and they'll walk you through it, because I'm not familiar with any other benefits. But with this administration, a lot of things are changing, because I know the Social Security benefit, their funds did increase at the end of 2022.
This would be a law that would need to be changed.
Okay.
Somebody needs to, advocate for us on the federal level.
Okay, if you're talking about Social Security for the adult, normally what happens is they need to go through counseling, get an assessment, and then that therapist will make a recommendation based off of the diagnosis that is given to that person. I've done many of those, and then they have had either a Social Security increase or the disability increase, but there's a very intensive process they have to go through for that.
Yeah, it's not related to disability. It's strictly related to being a parent who is older.
It's not going to happen then.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, my name is Teresa Repel, and I'm the Director of Community Services at the Area Agency on Aging. And I actually just got an email that the federal, let's see, I think that's the ACF is proposing a rule change for kinship grandparents, relatives, or close family friends that are helping children stay out of foster care. So, kinship. And they would be eligible for some financial benefits as foster parents are. And they're looking into decreasing the rules to make it easier for the kinship family person to be able to go through the system easier than a foster parent. So basically what they're proposing is that a kinship family member could receive financial benefits as a foster parent and only have to have the rules and only have to follow the federal rules instead of the federal plus the state rules, because each state is different. So that I just received that email today. I got to briefly read it today. So it does sound like something is in the works at the federal level to get something like this through. So kind of be out on the lookout.
Can that be put in the chat?
Yeah,
Sure.
That's what we spoke about earlier, Dr. Jones.
Yeah, this is Barb. I sort of want to clarify this because I don't want people to get too excited about it yet. this is a policy that we've been working on, specifically with the lawsuit that was filed a few years ago, which was filed for kinship caregivers who take children from who have children placed with them through children's services agencies. So it's only impacting those families when the child is placed by children's services into the caregiver's home. And in Ohio, caregivers are approved by children's services. So there is a different process for caregivers to have children placed with them as compared to a foster home. And there's an approval process. So there are some different standards. Because of that difference, those caregivers have not been paid the same as foster parents. They don't get the same payment as foster parents. There was a lawsuit, Glisson lawsuit was filed saying that they should, but that's been held up. Our state has not been willing to pay the same rates for those caregivers as they are foster parents. What this federal regulation is saying then is it's overriding everything, the Glisson suit and what states are doing, and saying that if the state has a different process to approve caregiver families, when a child is placed through children's services, and it's only those cases, then that approval process is okay for them to start paying the regular foster care maintenance payment that foster caregivers are paid. So this is what this rule is saying, is putting everything in line to support the fact that children's services agencies are supposed to look for a kinship or non-relative who has a connection to the child as the first placement consideration for a child before they go into foster care. And by doing this, then they allow the agency to pay the kinship caregiver the same rates as foster parents get. So it's only those cases. It's not those informal cases where the caregiver gets the child, the parent brings the child to the caregiver, and the caregiver may go to court and get custody. But it's those cases where the child is placed by children's services. So these are proposed rules. They're not in effect yet. It's going to probably take another 90 days to 6 months before they actually come into place and are effective for these situations. So it is a good thing. It's one thing that we've been advocating for, and we're glad to see the federal, the HHS people see that this is an important step in giving caregivers the same support as foster families.
Thank you, Barb. Ms. Sonia Ware.
Okay. I had a follow-up question, and this may be for Barb. Will those payments be retroactive from the time that Children's Services place the child in kinship care?
Right now, there's nothing that specifies that in the regulations. We'll have to wait until they actually promulgate the rules based on the regulations that they're proposing to see. My guess is probably no, but I don't want to make that, a definitive answer. We just have to wait and see till the federal regulations come out, and then the states put those into rules.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question. Thank you, Barb, for your support. Is there another question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi. I was wondering, my granddaughter has lived with me now for 5 years, and she's kind of throwing herself into her schoolwork. It kind of almost worries me that she, is so concerned about her grades. She got like all A's, but I hope that maybe she would qualify for scholarships. Are there any special scholarships available for kids that are in this situation? That's what I was wondering about.
Dr. Jones, do you know of any? Is your the lady that answered the last child? You said, what kind of
Yes,
situation is your child in?
she's living with in the home with with just my husband and myself. We've had her for 5 years now. Her mother's mentally ill and also a drug addict, and she's now in jail. And then my son and his girlfriend were here and living here for like 5 years. So they were both on fentanyl, but now they've cleaned up their act. But we haven't officially adopted her. We just went through Athens County Court and we've taken her in and done everything. But we're 75, it's harder. It's getting harder now, but I'm kind of worried about her future, that I would like for her to be able to get a college degree and get college education. It'll be harder for us that we may not be around to see it, though.
Absolutely. You can try. First place is the school counselor. Second place that I know of from experience trying to help another grandchild is the library. They have a book of scholarships, a book of, it's free money. And then that's what it's called. It's like Scholarship 2022, Scholarship 2023. I know for sure here in Summit County, it's in the library in downtown Akron in the children's department. So if you could try with your local library, I don't know if you're in Summit where you are, if you're in Summit.
We're in Dayton, Centerville.
Yeah, well, find your library and see where that book is at, because it's usually in the main library, and it's a thick book of scholarship.
Okay.
Also through College Now, Google College Now, they will also provide money for students to go to college. They require students to write essays, and so many essays, you get so many $1,000 for each essay you write. So College Now, if the headquarters is in Cleveland, but just Google College Now and it'll come up and contact that person.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Jones.
Very welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nancy Mendoza, and I'm an assistant professor in the College of Social Work at OSU. And these are wonderful questions. I would love to help out anyone who is interested. I do have someone who sends me information about, possible scholarships and things, because my daughter just started college this year. But there's also FAFSA. I do want to let you know that if you do adopt her, they will go off of your income on whether she gets assistance, and if so, how much assistance. So keep that in mind before you go through that process. But if you have any questions at all, email me. I'll add my email to the chat, and I am more than happy to send you a list of different websites. I do recommend they talk to their school counselor, because there are so many opportunities out there, and each university has their own scholarships. And in addition to that, every college, so whatever major they pick, there will also be other scholarships available. And there are ones out there for individuals who are raised by a family member other than a parent. There are ones out there for where you live, or what your hobbies are. There's even ones for your eye color. So there's a lot out there. There's millions of dollars that go unused every year.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nancy. That's real good. I was looking for the book. I was going to show it to you. I have 2 of those books, and you can also purchase those books on Amazon.com.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Peggy Ellen Faulkner. So the library that has this book on scholarships, does it also include things like children that are ADHD and have other underlying issues maybe?
I didn't look specifically, Peggy, for that, but I did find it to be, if the person played softball, there was a scholarship for that. So
Okay.
if you could, get a hold of it at the
Okay.
library, if you have a chance to get to the library, I would say review it. I'm not going to say yes and I'm not going to say no,
Okay. Oh,
but
yeah.
it's worth investigating.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So I'm going to do that.
Yes.
I also had wanted to make a comment earlier when you were talking about trauma to the grandparent that's raising grandchildren. I didn't know that we were calling it that because I never felt that I went through trauma. But after listening today,
Right.
I'm sure that I have. I raised 2 grandsons from the age of 3 and 4. They are now 16 and 15.
Yeah.
And boy, oh boy, you never know how damaged these children get from the things that their parents have done.
That's right.
When mine came to me, they were physically traumatized. One had been physically abused. They were both mentally traumatized. And it was just, it was really hard because I'm an only child. My son was an only child. And now all of a sudden I got 2. All of a sudden, I was a teacher and I came home for spring break. And by the time spring break was over, I had 2 children that I had to take care of in a matter of a week.
Wow.
And yes, but the principal was nice. She let them come to school for a week in the kindergarten classes. Then I found somebody to babysit, but I eventually had to quit my job because I couldn't get any help. No help from welfare, nothing. And so I couldn't get babysitting through welfare. So I had to quit. I had to quit my job. And it was really rough. And it finally got easier. I had a little help from my church. I don't have any family. So it was really a struggle and, not understanding. They both still have counselors. They both are still in counseling. And they've had counselors since they were about 5, 6, and
Yeah.
now I'm going through a different phase because now they're becoming men, but their father is now back in their life.
Okay.
So that's a little help. Okay. So I just, it's, has there ever been time for me? Nope, never. The only break I get is when I go grocery shopping. I'm 72 now and I have a disability. I'm in a wheelchair, but I still get out and go grocery shopping.
That's good.
I try to do things on my own, I used to take them with me all the time. I've stopped doing that now. They don't go with me anymore. I go by myself so I can just have that time to myself.
Yeah.
Every once in a while I might go to the movies, but it's challenging and people don't really understand just how challenging it is mentally and physically,
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Speak real quick. This is
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Miss Lumpkin.
yeah.
We can't understand you, Lenora.
Okay, my phone might be messing up, so
Okay,
I'm not gonna talk.
now it's good. Go
Can
ahead.
you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Her story, she just gave me hope. The last speaker, Peggy.
Good.
She just gave I'm raising 2 boys. It's hard. Had to quit my job. Couldn't get childcare. No income. I sure don't take them to the grocery store with me. She just, thank you. Tell her thank you.
You are more than welcome. You are more than welcome.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. But thank you for your strength. And I'm hearing it's not easy. And I'm like Miss Peggy. I went through it, but I didn't think of it as trauma until I spoke with Dr. Jones in creating this PowerPoint, because I just didn't think of it as trauma. Then, you know, you think of trauma as being a weather, a disaster, a storm, Hurricane Katrina, an earthquake. But these are emotional traumas, you know, that we just go through in our everyday lives. So this has been pleasant and an eye-opener for me too. And I appreciate the strength that you all have in doing what you do. And if it weren't for conscientious caregivers, once you really look at the picture, our children and our family and our afflicted kin, they would be devastated. So thank goodness for all of you.
Thank you, Miss Lily. Appreciate you. Are there any other questions or comments? So we know that trauma is real, and we know that self-care is also important. You know, try and find somebody that you can confide in, get into a support group. I may have to create a trauma support group as I'm listening to you guys talk, and do something virtual, because I know what I went through with my two grandchildren. You know, when you see them, you think everything's okay, but when reality shows up, it's something totally different. But because I had the support of my church, I was able to get through a lot of what I went through. But at the end of it, I made a decision to release those kids from me. I made a decision that I could no longer parent them. And it wasn't because of them, but it was because of the parents. Okay. And so their second cousin stepped in and took them. And because of the trauma that I experienced with them, we agreed in discussion that she could adopt them. And so we had an adoption hearing about 2 months ago. And so she legally adopted them, which will cut down on a lot of the stuff that she would have to deal with. And so I am still involved in their life, but it made it more safe and more, you know, better for her and for the children. So as you heard throughout this session, there's a lot going on. There's a lot that's placed on caregivers who step in and adjust their lives to take on relative children. So I want really to commend you on all of the good work that you do. And please feel free to reach out to us. If you're not involved with the support group that Angie puts on, I strongly encourage you to get involved with the support group. She's excellent, and she does great work with the caregivers. And so you have that additional support. Just keep in mind that our next meeting will be next month, and on the March the 15th, and we're going to talk about the Ohio Children's Trust Fund. You'll get information about, you know, what maybe you have access to. So tell invite at least 2 other caregivers that you know to come to the monthly meetings. In close, we pull a name and for a $50 gift card, and that person who's going to receive that $50 gift card is Michelle Livingstone. Raise your hand, Michelle, if you're still here in the Zoom meeting. So Bart will ensure that you get that $50 gift card. Are there any other questions or comments before we let you go? I want to encourage you to take care. Go ahead.
Yes, this is Peggy Ellen. Can I get information about that support group?
Yes, we'll get your name, and then we'll make sure you get that. Peggy
Ellen Faulkner.
Well, Dr. Jones, I think for everybody who may not be aware of how to access the support group. The support group that Angela Tobin is in charge of, she holds support groups every week, twice a week, one on Tuesdays at 11:30, one on Thursday evenings at 6:30. If you go to the OGKC website, and I did put that website in the chat, but all you have to do is, if you Google OGKC, the first thing that pops up generally is the Ohio Grandparent Kinship Coalition website. Go on to the website, and all the information about that support group is located on the website under the Getting Involved tab. And it has all the meeting dates and how you can link into the meeting for the whole month. That's updated every month. Both meetings, the Tuesday and the Thursday meetings, are updated. The link is the same for every meeting. So if you go to our website, that information is right there, as well as other information about mental health resources. We have a whole resources section on our website that deals with mental health. There are some other PowerPoint presentations that have been done over the last several years that are on there about mental health issues, and some connections to other resources. So please go to the OGKC website. There's a lot of good information on there that, you know, as you go through it, you'll find things that may apply to your situation or somebody else that you know.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Barb.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Could Barbara, you restate what the $50 gift card was? There's a question on what the gift card, how that's happened. So I think we just need to restate how that happened. How we provided a $50 gift card today.
Well, when the last couple of months, we've decided to provide a $50 gift card. And when I send out the meeting notices, I indicate in there that the caregivers that are on the meeting, when before the end of the meeting, we'll randomly select one of the caregivers that actually attend the meeting for a $50 gift card, and the gift card is to Walmart because that's pretty much available to everybody throughout the state. So it'll be a $50 gift card provided to a caregiver who's been selected randomly during the meeting time, and then we'll follow up with getting the information about where to send the gift card. So generally, until we may not have the funds to do that, probably in the next few meetings for this year, we'll do the same thing. Anytime we have a monthly meeting, we will select randomly somebody from the caregivers to receive the $50 gift card. Any other questions? Oh, okay.
As a way of saying thank you.
Right.
Are there any other questions or comments from our caregivers or speaker?
No, I just want to say thank you guys for all your help.
Well, we encourage, so we look forward to seeing you next month on March the 15th. I want to challenge you to invite at least 2 or 3 people that you know who are caregivers that may not know about our meetings. Reach out to them and give them the information. Otherwise, thank you for your service. Thank you for the commitment that you have. And remember, self-care is important.
Absolutely.
Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Take care.
God bless.